On the surface, Georgia's Lake Lanier is the picture of a perfect summer getaway, drawing millions of people to its shores every single year. They come for the thrilling boat races, the quiet patience of fishing, and the breathtaking beauty of its sprawling, tree-lined scenery. But just beneath those shimmering, sun-drenched waters lies a dark and profoundly unsettling secret, a history so tragic and violent that many people believe the lake itself is haunted. Since its creation in the 1950s, a disturbing and disproportionate number of people have died here. The unofficial count has climbed well over 500 lives lost, with some estimates putting it closer to 700. The lake is plagued by horrifying boating accidents, strange and sudden disappearances, and far too many inexplicable drownings. So the question isn't just what is causing all these recurring tragedies, but a much deeper one. What was here first? To find the answer, we have to travel back in time and uncover the story of the town that was drowned to make way for the water, the town of Oscarville. Lake Lanier's deadly reputation isn't just local folklore or campfire tales, it's a chilling legacy backed by staggering numbers. The rate of death and injury is unusually high when compared to other man-made lakes of its size, and while the Georgia Department of Natural Resources works to maintain official records, it feels like local news outlets are reporting a new, heartbreaking tragedy every single summer. People have drowned in calm, shallow water just feet from the shore. Experienced lifelong swimmers have suddenly panicked, describing a feeling of being pulled under by forces they couldn't see or fight. Divers who have been sent to recover victims paint a terrifying picture of the world below, a disorienting, treacherous maze of submerged trees with their branches reaching out like skeletal arms, splintered debris from long-gone structures, and the jagged, sharp ruins of buildings that were never fully cleared. And then there are the whispers, the bone-chilling stories from those who survived. Survivors of near-drowning incidents often tell the same terrifying story. They felt something distinctly grab them, like a pair of unseen hands yanking them down into the cold, dark and silent water. These accounts are so common and so unnervingly consistent, they have become part of the lake's very identity. The most famous of these tales is the legend of the Lady of the Lake. In 1958, a car carrying two women, Delia Parker Young and Susie Roberts, swerved off a bridge and vanished without a trace into the depths. A year later, a body was discovered floating near the bridge, but it was so badly decomposed that its hands were missing, making identification impossible. It wasn't until 1990, over 3 decades later, that the car was finally found, and inside was what was left of Susie Roberts. This discovery led everyone to believe that the handless body found all those years ago must have been Delia's. Ever since, visitors and locals have reported seeing the ghostly figure of a woman in a blue dress near that very bridge, sometimes described as having no hands, forever wandering the water's edge as if searching for something she can never recover. It's easy to write these off as just ghost stories, but the sheer volume of death and the weight of these eyewitness accounts make you wonder, what if the legends aren't just stories? What if they're the echoes of a deep, historical trauma buried and intentionally forgotten beneath the waves? To truly understand the curse, you first have to understand the crime. Before there was a Lake Lanier, there was a lush, green valley carved by a river. And in that valley, there was a town called Oscarville. In the early 20th century, Oscarville was a thriving, bustling and predominantly black community in Forsyth County. In an era of rampant and violent racial oppression across the American South, the black residents of Oscarville were building something lasting for themselves. Historical data reveals that by 1912, the community was a vibrant hub for farmers, skilled blacksmiths, carpenters and dedicated teachers. Dozens of black families owned their own land, a truly remarkable achievement in post-Civil War Georgia. They established their own churches, which became the heart of the community, and opened businesses, creating a robust, self-sufficient town. Oscarville wasn't just a place on a map, it was a beacon of progress and hope. a powerful testament to the strength and resilience of its people. But all of that was about to be violently and systematically torn away. The year was 1912, racial tensions, always simmering, were boiling over across the South. In September, a young white woman named May Crow was found brutally assaulted and left for dead in the woods near Oscarville. She died from her injuries days later. Though there were no witnesses and no evidence, blame was immediately and furiously thrown upon the nearby black community. A mob formed, hungry for what they called justice, but what was truly revenge. A black man named Rob Edwards was arrested, and before he could even face a trial, he was dragged from his jail cell by the mob, brutally beaten, shot multiple times, and then lynched in the town square. His body was left hanging from a telephone pole for all to see. Shortly after, two black teenagers, Ernest Knox and Oscar Daniel, were arrested and subjected to a sham trial before being publicly hanged in front of a cheering crowd of thousands. This wasn't an act of justice, it was the explosive start of a calculated and horrifying campaign of racial terror. The lynchings were only the beginning. In the weeks that followed, organised gangs of white men who called themselves the Night Riders tore through Forsyth County with a single, brutal message for its 1,100 black residents: leave or die. Under the cover of darkness, they burned black churches and homes to the ground, fired guns into houses where families were sleeping, and destroyed crops and property with impunity. Terrified families were forced to flee for their lives with only the clothes on their backs and whatever they could carry. They had to abandon their farms, their homes, their businesses, and their land, some of which they were still paying off. This was their entire world, generations of work stolen in an instant. Within just a few months, more than 1,000 black citizens, almost the entire black population of Forsyth County, were violently forced out. Oscarville, once a hub of black prosperity and a symbol of hope, was left a ghost town. It was completely erased. The land that had been legally owned, cultivated, and loved by black families for years was quickly seized by their white neighbours, often for pennies on the dollar or for nothing at all. For decades to come, Forsyth County would remain almost entirely white, gaining infamy as a sundown county, a place where black people were not welcome after dark under threat of violence. It was a brutal, appallingly successful act of racial cleansing, a dark chapter in Georgia's history that was deliberately forgotten by those who perpetrated it. The story of Oscarville became a whisper, a painful, traumatic memory for the scattered families, and a hidden, guilty truth for the county that was built on their stolen land. But the land itself wouldn't forget the injustice it had witnessed. For 40 years, the land where Oscarville once stood was either left empty and overgrown, or farmed by the very people who had taken it. The memory of the town faded. Then, in the late 1940s, the US government arrived with a new, ambitious plan to construct the Buford Dam on the Chattahoochee River to provide hydroelectric power and a steady water supply for the booming city of Atlanta. The project required flooding over 50,000 acres of land, and the stolen ground that once belonged to Oscarville's exiled residents was right in the path of the rising water. The government purchased the land from its current owners, displacing another 250 families, this time both white and black. But this time, it wasn't just homes and farms standing in the way, it was history itself. The clearing process for the future lakebed was an enormous undertaking, but it was notoriously incomplete. While some buildings were torn down and larger structures were moved, many foundations, old roads, wells, and stone walls were simply left behind to be covered by the water. Most disturbingly, the project's path cut through an estimated 20 cemeteries. While official records claim that these cemeteries were respectfully relocated, the process was rushed and poorly managed. It's widely believed that in the hurry to create the lake, countless unmarked graves and small family plots, especially those belonging to the forgotten and displaced black community of Oscarville, were simply abandoned, ignored, and left to be submerged. It was a final, watery desecration of a people who had already been erased from the land itself. When the Buford Dam's floodgates were finally closed in 1956, the water began to rise, slowly and silently swallowing what was left of Oscarville. The town's remains, its streets, its foundations and its graves disappeared beneath the surface, creating a second burial for a community that never received justice. As a final insult, the new lake was named after Lake Lanier, a celebrated Georgia poet who had proudly served as a private in the Confederate Army. So, Lake Lanier is a place of profound and haunting contradictions. It's a recreational paradise built directly on top of a foundation of unimaginable pain. It's a source of life-giving water for a major American city, and yet it is a place that has mysteriously taken hundreds of lives. The persistent stories of hauntings, of ghostly hands pulling swimmers to their doom, and of the sorrowful Lady of the Lake. Perhaps they're much more than just campfire tales. They feel like a deeply spiritual manifestation of the lake's violent and unresolved past, a past that refuses to stay quiet. The spirits of Lake Lanier might not just be the unfortunate victims of tragic accidents, but the collective ghosts of an entire community that was violently driven from their homes, only to have their memory, their history, and their final resting places drowned in the name of progress. The story of Oscarville is a chilling and powerful reminder of the deep scars of racial injustice that lie just beneath the surface of American history, sometimes quite literally. The next time you see the sun sparkling on the beautiful, inviting waters of Lake Lanier, take a moment to remember what's buried below. Remember the town, remember the people, and remember the history that was drowned here. Because while the water may have covered the evidence of the crime, the story of Oscarville refuses to stay submerged. If you were shocked by this hidden piece of American history, please share this video to help bring the story of Oscarville to light. We want to know your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever heard the legends about Lake Lanier, or do you have a story of your own? And don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into the forgotten corners of history. If you'd like to support our channel, consider joining us on Patreon. Your support helps us keep creating great content. And as a thank you, you'll get access to exclusive perks such as bonus videos, early releases, on-screen credits, and much more. Thank you for watching the video, and I'll see you in the next one.